record this. All right, so once again, thank you guys so much for showing up this morning. I really appreciate it. It's great to actually be able to interact with you guys in real time. I can see you and hear you, so you're welcome to talk or whatever. Also, if you don't have that capability, I do have the chat up, so you're welcome to type in there and I'll be able to see your questions and responses from there. Merely showing up this morning gets you guys 10% of extra credit on your quiz, which opens up at 11 o'clock today. So hooray, A for effort. And speaking of that, before we actually get started with our little review here, I do want to just mention a couple things about grades, if that's okay. I mean, I'm sure that's all going through your mind. Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, so I did post the just raw grades that I have from you guys as of exam 2. And I say raw grades because, as you might imagine, there will be some more modifications from here, but always in your favor, right? So when I say modifications in your favor, what I mean is that I plan on dropping the lowest quiz grade, right? So whether it's before spring break or after spring break, whatever your lowest quiz grade is, that will disappear and therefore your grade will start to get bumped up. Hooray. Let's see, other things. Let's see, there will be more extra credit, often as simple as like showing up this morning. Hooray. So that will also boost up your grade. And as much as possible, I will try to grade as graciously as possible. I know that you guys are all feeling the pressure of this new world that we're living in, and so I don't want that to affect your grades. So I will do what I can to increase them in your favor, right? So still being fair, still assessing your knowledge, but overall giving you the benefit of the doubt. Also, I do want to mention that the university, of course, has this pass no credit policy at this point. I'm not sure if you guys understand what that means, but I do want to mention that I will continue grading according to the decisions that we make, according to the usual policies. At the end of the semester, I will enter your letter grade into Banner, and you'll be able to see that letter grade. And from there, if you're graduating, you'll have 2 days to decide if you want to keep that letter grade or if you want to replace it with a pass grade, right? So a pass, hooray, you can move on to the next level. Hooray, you can graduate. The only possible drawback is that if you earn like a B in the class, if you show your transcript to a grad school, they might say, oh, you just took a pass. That might be lower than what you actually earned. So
yeah.
Was there a question or? Okay.
I have a question. Are there negatives to taking a pass? Because I know some of my professors have said that. Like if you were going to get a, like let's say like if you're going to get a B but you wanted an A, like you shouldn't take a pass, right? Like you should just keep the B, you think?
Yeah, you should absolutely keep the B. At least that's what I would recommend. Of course, it's 100% your decision, but an actual letter grade might be, might look a little bit better in the long run, as opposed to just a pass, right? And of course, I will keep your grades on record, until the end of time, until the end of Excel anyway. And so if you ever need a letter to defend your performance in the class when you're applying to grad school or jobs or whatever, I would be more than happy to write a letter just explaining, this was during the pandemic and you participated, you did your best, and, just given the circumstances, you got a B instead of an A, or you took a pass instead of what you would have gotten, which was, a B. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Sweet. Oh, and the other thing is, at this point, I really just want you guys to show up and be engaged. And of course, you guys are here at 10 o'clock in the morning. You are absolutely doing that. But as long as you participate in the remainder of the semester, you won't fail. So, whatever the letter that is entered into Banner is going to be pass, right? So even if you are, totally stressed out, this is really not working for you, and your grades or your actual scores are tanking a little bit, you're not gonna fail as long as you participate, right? If you aren't up for the challenge, if you aren't up for participating in the rest of the semester, the drop deadline is next Friday. But again, A for effort, right? You show up, you are going to pass. Does that make sense? Anyone need any clarification on that?
I had a question. So for the Ed puzzle, I watched the video on the YouTube link, and I finished the whole thing, and I answered all the questions. I only got one wrong, and it's still saying unfinished. So like I didn't know what to do.
Gotcha. So yes, thank you so much for bringing that up. On my end, I can see how much time you watched it. I can see what questions you answered and how much time you answered those questions. And so as long as you are answering all the questions, I'll give you credit for that.
So do I have to like go back and do anything, or I should be good, right?
Nope, you should be good. And I see that the overwhelming majority of people already did that. Awesome, thank you guys so much. Hopefully that's still a helpful resource for you guys. I did extend the deadline to complete that until the end of today, just in case, you know, it slipped your mind or whatever. So if you haven't done it yet, complete that. Again, you can watch it on YouTube and just answer the questions on Ed Puzzle. I don't care as long as you're, you know, engaging with it.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Any other?
I have a question.
Sure.
So besides just coming to these meetings for extra credit, what other extra credit is like available?
So I will, as always, give some extra credit questions on quizzes and on tests. I have a couple different readings, much shorter readings than before, and you know, similar kind of a thing. You read it, you write a little bit about it, and submit it. Let's see, is there anything else that you guys think that might be valuable as extra credit? I mean, I'm all ears at this point. Okay. I guess showing up to these things, hooray, you get extra credit just for being here. I'll add a couple readings within the week, or I guess before Monday. And just like you guys have been doing, read it. They'll be much, much shorter than before. I know it's kind of crunch time at this point in the semester. And then you'll earn extra credit. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
No worries. All right. Well, I guess at this point, I did make a little Jeopardy game like we got to play when we were having class in person. So what I want to do is just go through it with you guys together. Of course, we can't have teams or anything like that, unfortunately, but if you do want to answer, you can just shout out the answer, or you can type it in the chat, whatever you guys want, right? If I can figure out how to find the chat at the same time. All right, is there any, this worked earlier. Any preference on what one to do first? What question to answer first? Or we'll just start with what is an animal for 100? All right. So this form of programmed cell death is important in tadpoles losing their tails, digits losing their webbing. So this, we start out in utero with webbing between our fingers, and then of course most of us lose that webbing over time, and culling unused neurons or self-selecting immune cells, right? So we don't want to attack our own cells, we only want to attack foreign things, right? Like bacteria and viruses. So what kind of programmed cell death?
Apoptosis.
Apoptosis, perfect. All right, any questions about that? All right. Awesome. I'm not sure who just answered, but if you want to choose the next one, by all means.
Can we do animal evolution for 300?
Perfect. All right. only in bilaterally symmetrical animals can we observe this phenomenon. And the phenomenon is the concentration of nervous tissue into the central nervous system, so essentially into the head, as opposed to this kind of like network of nerves all around the body.
Cephalization.
Perfect. Good job, hooray. Any questions about that from anybody? Right, so this is an advantage to being bilaterally symmetrical. If you are radially symmetrical, yes, you can kind of, experience the world from all sides, but you can't like run away from things. You can't have a really complex brain because your nervous system is spread out everywhere. All right, what next? Buddy? All right, well, we'll do this just arbitrarily. Okay, members of this phylum have jointed appendages, an exoskeleton protecting their head, thorax, and abdomen. So what is the name of this phylum? Emphasis on jointed appendages, right? Like if you have arthritis, this is inflammation of the the joints. And
Arthropods?
very good. So the arthropoda or the arthropods, perfect. Right, so of course the arthropods are wildly diverse, but they all have these three characteristics in common, right? Jointed appendages, exoskeleton, and these three segments. Good job. All right, if I'm going too fast or too slow, you can tell me. All right, choice for what's next?
What is an animal 400?
Perfect. All right, all animals have these genes, so it's a set of genes which are expressed at different times and at different abundances to produce wildly different forms. So there's a couple different answers that you could go with here. Types of genes. All animals but the sponges have them.
Is it stem cells?
So stem cells are a type of cell, not a type of gene. And so that is a great point though. Stem cells can express any of these toolkit genes, right? So the Hox genes, the Sonic Hedgehog genes, hooray. They can express them in different combinations and at different times to produce very different forms, right? So stem cells have full access to the toolkit. Once they start to differentiate, then they can only access certain tools at certain times. Any more clarification needed on that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Awesome. All right, what's next?
Animal evolution 400?
Perfect. Yeah, and really anyone can shout out, it's all good. It's a little bit less structured than in class. All right, so this group of organisms, or in this group, the mouth develops first. So through that blastopore.
Oh shoot, I just, oh.
Is it protostomes?
Yes, it is. Woohoo, very good. So the protostomes, not us, our anus develops before our mouth. So the protostomes develop the mouth first. And as I mentioned, this isn't like a hard and fast rule. This rule was the rule before, but now we know there's a lot of exceptions, but we still talk about the protostomes versus the deuterostomes as general groups. Good with that? All right, next.
Animal evolution 500.
Very good. An early advantage of this structure was its role in allowing greater range of motion as a hydrostatic skeleton. Right, so essentially this is something that is filled with fluid that the animal can kind of squeeze along to allow it to move a lot more quickly.
This is like,
So a word for a body cavity. Starts with a C.
Is
A
it like
capsule?
the Coelom? I can't pronounce the
Yeah.
word.
That one.
coelom.
The C
Yeah,
was
it's
coelom.
coelom.
Thank you.
Sorry. The C one. Yeah, so this is a coelom. It was super important at first just for moving, but as maybe we know at this point, we got to start evolving all sorts of different organs within this coelom, and therefore we can move around without those organs like rubbing on each other. They're nice and buoyant within that coelom, and therefore lots more protection. Very good. All right, any preference for where we go next?
What is an animal 200?
The most recent common ancestor of the animals probably looked a lot like this group of organisms. Not that we descended directly from them, but they are our most closely related organisms.
Is it the Shenanoflagellate? Something like that?
Absolutely. The Coelom. So
There you go.
that's totally what you said. I understand. So we, of course, learned a lot about research on choanoflagellates via that lecture from the Berkeley professor, I believe. And so these guys have both a flagellum and a bunch of cilia. The sponges look so much like colonial choanoflagellates. Not that they are directly descended from them, but they are closely related. Okay, our sister group. Don't worry, you don't have to pronounce these words on the quiz. Grading is not dependent on pronunciation. Any preference for what's next?
Mm-mm.
Arbitrarily, we'll do miscellaneous, just for the heck of it. This is the term for the fast adaptive radiation at the end of the Cretaceous period, during which all major animal phyla appeared. So adaptive radiation, so lots and lots of organisms evolving to fill new niches relatively quickly. This is a big one. Cambrian Explosion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally what we were all thinking, right? Just didn't want to say.
I was looking at it. I just wasn't sure.
Very good. So the Cambrian Explosion, all of the major phyla appeared. Of course, a lot of those phyla have since died out, right? So we lost the dinosaurs, we lost all sorts of organisms, but all of the lineages arose during this 50 million year period, which sounds like a long time, but if you think about it, it's just a drop in a bucket. Cambrian Explosion. All right, what's next? For this one, this phylum's individuals use flagellated cells to create a current for filter feeding. They don't have true tissues, and they release larvae into the water after sexual reproduction.
Is it Porifera?
Perfect. So these are the sponges, right? So they don't really have true tissues. They don't have an epithelium versus a digestive tract or any of those types of things. But we do consider them to be animals because they share a lot of the same characteristics and a lot of the same genes. Okay. The sponges. All right. What is next? If you guys have a preference. The chelicerates have 8 walking legs, 2 mouthpart appendages, and a pair of pedipalps for sensing the environment. This subphylum includes the spiders and this organism. So what is this organism that you see on the beaches all the time? All right, starting
The
left.
horseshoe crab.
The horseshoe crabs, hooray. And you can always tell what your professors love, right? So if it's not obvious, I love ecology, I love South Jersey ecology in particular, and physiology. And so lots of horseshoe crabs, lots of Pine Barrens ecology. So hopefully you guys are learning a little bit about Stockton's home. Any questions about the horseshoe crabs? Still find it amazing that they're still the same as they were 450 million years ago. They're amazing. All right. Any preference for the next question? The muscular system develops from this germ layer. Okay. So remember, we have diploblasts. They have only an endoderm and an ectoderm. Triploblasts have endoderm, ectoderm, and mesoderm. So which of those develops the muscles?
Is it the mesoderm?
Very good. Oops. Perfect. So the muscular system is a little bit of a latecomer to the game. If you think about jellyfish, for example, whenever they move, they kind of move their entire body wall. And that's because they don't really have true muscle tissue, right? They don't have this mesoderm to create actinomyosin and therefore the shortening of muscle cells. Okay, very good. Any questions about diploblasty versus triploblasty and any of those layers? On the quiz, it might be a good idea to have those, those slides available so that you can quickly reference, this is what comes from the endoderm, this is what comes from the ectoderm, etc. Just hint, hint, nudge, nudge, right? Next.
What is an animal 300?
All right. Both animals and this clade are heterotrophic, but only animals ingest their food, right? So what is the closely related heterotrophic clade or major group? Actually, another kingdom. And so here I just want to point out that both animals and fungi are heterotrophic, right? So none of them are photosynthesizing, they have to eat other things. But fungi kind of spit out enzymes into their environment and then absorb those digested molecules through the surface of the cells. In animals, all of us, we take food into our body, and the next lecture we'll talk a lot more about this, but we take it into our body, secrete the enzymes into a tube, and therefore absorb, into our blood from there, right? So only animals. Sorry, what was that?
No, I'm fine. Never mind.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. So animals ingest food, fungi digest outside their body, and then absorb. Okay. Of course, the echinoderms are kind of somewhere in between, and they have evolved the ability to turn their stomachs inside out and digest outside their bodies, but ultimately they suck up all that food back into their stomach. Hopefully that was an interesting video. Echinoderms are just wild. Right. Any preference for what's next? All right, just arbitrarily. Although nematodes and annelids are both worms, only the nematodes do this when they grow. So keep in mind that the nematodes have almost like a little shell on the outside of them, and so they need to do something every time they want to get larger and larger. And so the nematodes are ecdysozoan, whereas the annelids are lophotrochozoan. Right, so the ecdysozoans shed their cuticle, whereas the other guys do not. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the feedback. It's so good to like hear voices and not just talk to my computer with the bird in the background. Sorry, the bird gets super excited every time I talk, and so I'm sure that all of the lectures just have him like yelling at me in the background. So sorry. Anyway, any preference on what's next?
What is an animal for 500?
Beautiful. Animalia is a what phyletic? Remember we have mono, para, and polyphyletic within the what clade of Eukarya? So this one's super hard. So first of all, Animalia. Do all of the animals descend from a single common ancestor, or is it a group made up of a whole bunch of different lineages from other clades of Eukarya?
It's made of other lineages.
Okay. Actually, we are all descended from one single common ancestor. So that ancestor was very similar to a choanoflagellate, right? Like that professor was talking about. So this would actually be a monophyletic group. But that was a good guess, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so monophyletic, we're all descended from a single common ancestor, right? We don't have some animals that have descended from like algae and some animals that have descended from amoeba or anything. We're all descended from something similar to a choanoflagellate. And we are episthecons, right? Just like the fungi, just like the choanoflagellates. Okay, when we talked about protists, we talked about those 7 different clades. That's what I'm referring to here. Any questions about those? That was a little trickier, but it's 500 points, you know. Right. Almost finished here. Any preference?
Let's do animal evolution 100.
All right. Just like plants, early land animals developed this structure to minimize water loss through the skin.
Cuticle.
Yes, very good. All right, so the same thing. And again, your next lecture is going to talk about insects and about how they have these little holes in the sides of their cuticles that they can actually open and close so they can breathe with them open, but then when they close them, they prevent water loss. So it's like literally the same thing that's happening in plants. All right, no new ideas. Sweet. Preference?
Traits for 400.
Great. This phylum contains an incomplete digestive tract, a nerve net, and poisonous harpoons called nematocysts. They can also exhibit an alternation of generations between the polyp, which kind of sticks up like this, and the medusa, which sticks its little tentacles down.
Cnidarians.
Cnidarians. Very cool. All right, so again, an incomplete digestive tract, the entrance is the same as the exit. So they can only digest when they're not eating. A nerve net as opposed to like a head. And poisonous harpoons, of course, that's probably the most interesting part about those guys. Right. Any questions about the cnidarians? Very cool. Where are we going next?
Traits for 500.
All right. The flatworms, annelids, and mollusks are considered to be what based on whether or not they have a particular type of larvae and or suspension feeding structures. Is a really big word. Okay, so not ecdysozoans, but lophotrochozoans. Right, so lopho for the suspension feeding structure and trocho for the larval structure. And so for the quiz and the subsequent exam, I would definitely recommend having those phylogenies that I gave you accessible so that you can actually classify, you know, flatworm is this and it's this and it's this.
Just have a question. What are suspension feeding structures?
Yeah, good question. So we're not really going to get into this too much, right? We have to cut something, unfortunately, but there are a lot of different feeding mechanisms of animals, and suspension feeding is essentially like, you know, sticking up little tentacles or something into the water and having things like that are suspended in the water stick to those feeding structures and then being able to take it in and digest it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions about this? Awesome. All right, miscellaneous for 1, 3, or 5. Not that we're getting points.
5.
All right. The horseshoe crab eggs are necessary food source for this migratory bird.
The red knot?
Yes, it is. Very good. All right, the red knot. Thanks. All right, well, let's go. This one, within phylum Mollusca, the octopus is classified as this. Remember, there's kind of 3 main subphyla within the mollusks.
Cephalopoda.
Very good. All right, so the head feet. Awesome. And last but not least, snails use this structure to scrape food off a substrate.
Radula.
Very good. Awesome, the radula. All right, well, that's all the review that I have for you guys. Was this helpful doing this way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. Are you going to be posting?
Definitely.
Very helpful.
Awesome, very good. I am recording this, so in theory, I can post the recording so that you guys can, you know, go through it and see all this over again. If that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
I'll wait. I had a question. I don't know if I missed that. I stepped away for a second, but are you gonna be posting the Jeopardy like that, like the last time one?
So I will post the Zoom recording.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And if I can wrangle it onto Blackboard, I'll do it that way. If not, it'll be posted on YouTube just like everything else. Now that I know how to, you know, do the YouTube thing, that's how it's working. Would you like something like this again before the next quiz or before the next exam?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, fantastic. I can definitely make that
Would we
happen.
be able to do a Kahoot instead? So we could all like participate?
Oh, that's a great idea. Yes, fantastic idea. We'll try it that way next time. Cool. Write that down because there's so many things floating around in my head right now, as I'm sure it is for you guys as well. All right. Any other questions or feedback you want to give me?
For exam 3, is that going to be cumulative?
It is supposed to be cumulative. I can say that the only real like throwbacks to other things are going to be mentioned in this section of the class as well. For example, a monophyletic group is something we talked about for the first exam, but you still kind of have to know it to talk about the animals, right? Adaptive radiation, something else that we talked on literally day 1 about class, or talked about day 1 of class, that of course makes an appearance here as well. So no details from the previous exams, just, you know, what we continue to talk about.
And you said the quiz today is open at 11 until when?
11 this morning until 11 p.m. on Monday. Is that working out for everybody to have like literally 4 days to choose when to take it, or?
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then I will leave it like that for the last couple tests.
And one more question. So wait, exam 3 is kind of like our final in a way?
It is exactly your final.
Okay. But it gets factored in with the other exams?
Yep. So as of now, your exams are worth 50% of your total grade in the class. And I say as of now, I mean, I'll look at the numbers a little bit and see if, that shouldn't be weighted as heavily, but it seemed like for the most part, people did pretty well on exam 2. So that is encouraging. I'll keep looking at the numbers. I'll see what way the numbers look better.
Okay. And for the quiz, how much time do we have, or is it like as much time as we want?
I think this one is 45 minutes or so. I can go back in and check that for you guys. But it'll say when the quiz pops up how much time you have.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No worries.
You said like our final, like our average as of right now is posted, and then so is our test grade for test 2. Is that like worth all the extra credit, like the reading and then like doing the extra writings and all that?
So the exam grades that are posted is really just whatever, Blackboard has for you, whatever the Blackboard grading says. The total grades I calculated in Excel like I usually do, and that incorporates all of the extra credit, all of the ed puzzles up until, the fungus one. So that does include everything as of right now.
All right. Thank you.
No worries. I will stick around on here for a few more minutes. If you want to hang out and talk a little bit more privately, by all means, we can do that. I'm going to stop the recording now and do my best to get that online, however that ends up working. Okay, but once again, thank you guys so much. It has been wonderful to talk to you guys. I genuinely miss you guys and being in class with you, but I hope you're doing well, and I'll hopefully see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.